welcome to the deep dive. You know, if you're like us, you're always looking for those knowledge shortcuts, not just summaries, but really powerful insights that kind of cut through all the noise out there. We're digging into excerpts from something called the Hale Institute Collaborative Production. And what's really striking, I think, is that these sources aren't just sharing knowledge. They're actually revealing a whole new model for generating it. We're sort of looking under the hood, seeing how information gets processed in this age of just overwhelming data.
Precisely. And Hale isn't just, say, a publisher or a think tank. They define it as an innovative partnership. That specific phrasing immediately makes you think differently, doesn't it? It shifts the focus from just reading what they found to understanding the structure, the foundation they built to find it.
Exactly. And the partners involved, that's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's explicitly described as a marriage between human insight and AI synthesis. So we're talking about blending, deep human wisdom, interpretation, that kind of thing, with the raw power, the brute force capability of machine processing. Today, we're doing something pretty fascinating, taking a piece of history, really. We have this text nearly 2 centuries old. It's a 19th century guide to health, the Tablet of Medicine. And our mission, it's straightforward. We're taking this wisdom, rooted in spiritual insight and careful observation. We're going to put it side by side with modern medical science, preventive care, nutrition, the works. Basically, we want to see how many of these principles are actually timeless.
Exactly. And for you listening in, think of this as a kind of shortcut. We're not just looking at this historically. It's about seeing which ideas from the 1800s, often based on just, observation and philosophy, which of those have been proven right by modern research, the big expensive studies. It helps filter out the noise, right? We're trying to find those core health truths that science eventually confirmed.
Okay, let's dive in and maybe start where most health journeys do.
Yeah.
Eating, how we eat. The text gives a principle that sounds, almost suspiciously modern. Do not eat except when you are hungry.
It's so simple. But wow, do we struggle with it. This is basically intuitive eating, isn't it? Before it had a fancy name. If you're eating by the clock or, because you're stressed or bored, you're ignoring your body's own signals and eating only when you're truly hungry. That's proven to help regulate metabolism. It's key in tackling overeating, obesity, insulin resistance, all that. It's kind of radical, just how simple it is.
Okay, sticking with eating. There's this really specific instruction, almost microscopic. Do not swallow until you have thoroughly masticated your food.
Chewing. Why such a focus on just chewing?
But that's where the genius is. It hits both the mechanical and the chemical side of things. Mechanically, breaking food down makes it easier on your stomach and intestines, less work later on. But chemically, that thorough chewing, it gets your salivary enzymes going. You're basically starting to digest starches and fats right there in your mouth.
So it's not just about making it easier to get down. Oh, definitely not. The big thing is, when you eat slower, which you have to do if you're chewing properly, you feel full sooner. Satiety improves, you tend to eat less overall. But here's that sophisticated bit you mentioned. It actually improves your glycemic response. The food breaks down slower, glucose enters your bloodstream more gently, not a big spike, which makes it way easier for your body to manage blood sugar. That's critical, helps prevent those energy crashes too.
Wow, so that simple physical act, it's like a free tool for managing blood sugar.
Yeah.
This is really interesting. All right, so if we've chewed properly, what about timing, meal timing? The text advocates for, it sounds like pretty serious meal spacing. Do not take nourishment except when digestion is completed.
Yeah, think of it like giving your internal system a proper rest period. We know today, letting your stomach actually empty before you pile more food in, it's really beneficial. All the modern research on, say, time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, it's basically confirming this exact idea. Giving your body that break improves insulin sensitivity, and that's, vital for long-term metabolic health.
And right alongside timing, it really hammers home moderation. He who overeats, his illness becomes more severe.
That's a strong warning, isn't it? Not just about feeling stuffed, it's about a chronic burden on the body. It connects straight to modern advice on portion control, managing the load on your digestive system, and preventing that constant metabolic stress that leads to insulin resistance. Back in the 19th century, they saw overeating as a cause of serious illness, not just, a bit of indulgence.
Okay, so if the rule is space out meals, let digestion rest. What does the text say we should do with our bodies then, when the stomach is empty?
It talks about movement, exercise directly, and the guidance is pretty clear. Exercise is good on an empty stomach, but very bad when the stomach is full.
Right, we've all felt that. Trying to go for a run after a big meal. Never ends well. But is it just about comfort? Or is there a real physiological reason why it's bad?
It's about where your body needs to send resources, basically blood flow. When you exercise fasted or just on an empty stomach, your body shifts gears. It starts burning fat for fuel more efficiently, tapping into reserves. But when your stomach is full, your body's sending a huge amount of blood to your digestive tract to process that food. If you try to exercise hard, then you're creating competition for that blood flow. Leads to bloating, reflux, sure, but it can also make both digestion and your workout less efficient. It's a physiological traffic jam.
But it doesn't say just sit there after eating, right? It offers that really gentle advice.
Yeah.
Something doctors still say. Walk a little that the food may settle.
Yes. That's universally recommended today. It's spot on. That little bit of post-meal walking, it physically helps prevent reflux, but scientifically, that light movement is crucial for managing blood sugar. It helps move glucose out of your blood and into your muscles, dampens that post-meal spike. It's such a simple, effective thing to do. No pills needed.
And there are a couple of other practical timing tips, not strictly about food, like for sleep. It says, do not drink after you have retired to sleep.
Again, simple, common sense stuff that modern sleep experts really push for. The goal is minimizing nocturia, waking up in the middle of the night, needing the bathroom. That just fragments your sleep, ruins the quality. So avoiding liquids right before bed helps you sleep through. Better rest.
And flipping that to the morning. A little food in the morning is like a light to the body.
It reinforces that need for sustained energy. Not a huge, heavy meal, maybe, but something. A balanced breakfast, just some light fuel. It supports energy levels through the morning, helps with focus, cognition, and helps keep blood sugar stable throughout the day. Prevents those mid-morning slumps. It's about thoughtful fueling, right? Not just jamming calories in.
Okay, let's pivot a bit from these daily habits to the core treatment philosophy, because this is where the text sets a standard that must have been pretty radical for its time. The main rule: treat disease first of all through the diet and refrain from medicines.
That's a huge statement, isn't it? A lifestyle-first approach, mandated, and today. Major health bodies totally validate this, absolutely. For managing chronic diseases, things like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, some heart conditions, diet and lifestyle changes, they are the first line of defense, the foundation, often before medication, or to minimize how much is needed.
But hold on. Thinking about the 1800s, were medicines even that effective back then? Effective enough to be something you'd want to actively refrain from? Is this more philosophical, or was it just practical advice because, 19th century drugs could be pretty rough?
That's a great question. It was likely both, actually, which makes the advice even more potent. Philosophically, yes, it emphasizes the body's own ability to heal, trusting that innate capacity, but practically, you're right. Medicines back then were often crude, sometimes toxic, effects weren't well understood, so caution was definitely wise. But the timeless wisdom here is that focusing on diet and lifestyle is fundamentally less invasive and often more effective long-term than relying solely on external treatments.
And this preventative idea gets stronger when you look at what it says to remove. It insists on leaving all harmful habits. They cause unhappiness in the world.
Yeah, it's a holistic view, isn't it? Harm reduction, but broader. It's not just a checklist of physical no-nos like tobacco or too much alcohol or just sitting around all day. It explicitly says these things cause unhappiness. It links the physical harm directly to, mental and maybe even spiritual well-being, or lack thereof.
This less is more idea then flows right into actual treatments. The text advises, do not neglect treatment when it is necessary, but leave it off when the body is in good condition.
That perfectly captures what we now call deprescribing in modern medicine. It really does. Deprescribing is this conscious effort, guided by doctors, to reduce or even stop medications that might not be needed anymore, especially if someone's health has improved, maybe because of those very lifestyle changes we talked about.
What stops that from happening more often? Deprescribing sounds like, just common sense. Why is it sometimes a hurdle?
Well, it can be complex. Polypharmacy is a big one. Patients on lots of different drugs. It gets tricky to untangle. And there's often a fear, maybe from the patient or the doctor, that symptoms might come back. Fear of relapse. But this text provides that clear principle. If the body is doing well on its own strength, ease off the external stuff. It's about avoiding unnecessary exposure to potential side effects or drug interactions, keeping it clean.
And speaking of clean, it also pushes for simplicity within treatments. If you find what you need in a single herb, do not use compound medicines.
That's a really strong argument for what we call monotherapy today. One treatment at a time, if possible. Whether it's one targeted drug or maybe an evidence-based single herbal remedy, using just one effective thing keeps it simple, because every time you add another agent, another drug, another compound, you massively increase the risk of interactions, things going wrong. Simplicity is almost always safer in treatment.
Okay, now this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. The text dives right into the connection between emotions and physical health. It tells us to shun grief and sorrow, they cause the greatest misery.
And we know this now scientifically. We absolutely do. Chronic unresolved emotional states, they have huge physical consequences. Things like long-term grief, chronic stress, constant anxiety. These states drive inflammation throughout the body. They suppress the immune system. They're linked to heart disease, even serious mental illness. Managing your emotional state isn't just nice to have. It's actually a physiological necessity for health and long life.
And it gets even more specific, claiming that jealousy eats the body and anger burns the liver. That's vivid.
It is vivid and maybe a bit metaphorical, but the underlying insight is spot on. Anger, envy. These strong negative emotions trigger our stress response system, the HPA axis. You get flooded with cortisol, adrenaline. If that's happening constantly, it directly increases cardiovascular risk, higher blood pressure, strain on the heart, and burns the liver. Well, maybe not literally fire, but chronic stress and the inflammation it causes are known to contribute to liver problems, like fatty liver disease or dysfunction. So the core idea that toxic emotions are physically corrosive, modern psychoneuroimmunology completely backs that up. It's incredible insight for the time.
Now, we do need to tackle something that clearly comes from older ideas. The text mentions making sure the humors of the body should not be excessive. Humors. We're talking about scientifically validated stuff, and suddenly here's, outdated humoral theory. How do we square that?
Right, that does jump out. But I think we square it by looking at the goal behind the words, not the literal mechanism they used back then. We don't believe in the 4 bodily humors anymore, obviously. That theory is obsolete. But the core principle, balance, internal equilibrium, that's absolutely central to modern biology. We call it homeostasis. Modern medicine is constantly checking biomarkers, blood sugar, hormone levels, electrolytes, inflammation markers, making sure they're not excessive or too low. So the fundamental idea that health requires internal balance, that's timeless, even if their model for how you achieve that balance was, flawed.
Makes sense. Focus on the principle, not the outdated explanation. And we also have to acknowledge the spiritual dimension woven into this. The advice actually starts, heal the sick first, by the mentioning of the name of God.
Yeah, and it's important not to just dismiss that as purely religious dogma. There's an acknowledgement there of the psychological power of faith, belief, contemplation, whatever you want to call it. Modern holistic care models are increasingly recognizing this. They're integrating practices like mindfulness, meditation, even prayer where appropriate, because there's growing evidence they work. They can measurably reduce stress, build resilience, regulate the nervous system, and actually improve patient outcomes, especially in chronic illness.
And finally, it even talks about the healer, the doctor themselves.
Yeah.
The guidance describes the ideal physician as someone who has drunk from the wine of my love, whose breath is mercy and hope. Poetic.
It is poetic, but it speaks volumes about the therapeutic relationship. It's not just about technical skill. We know from mountains of research now that empathy, compassion, how a doctor communicates, it fundamentally changes things. It builds patient trust. It improves adherence. People are more likely to follow advice if they feel cared for. When a patient feels genuinely seen, heard, and hopeful, their own capacity to heal is boosted profoundly. So yeah, the physician's character, it's just as vital as their clinical knowledge. It creates the actual healing environment.
So wrapping this up, after putting this nearly 200-year-old tablet of medicine through the modern scientific filter, the conclusion seems pretty clear. It offers this incredibly timeless guidance. It's all rooted in moderation and mindfulness and a lifestyle-first approach to healing. And almost every key idea holds up against modern science. Health is this. Sacred trust, maybe, built on wisdom and what we can measure.
Absolutely. And it makes you think, doesn't it? If nearly all these foundational principles, chew your food well, don't overeat, move a bit after meals, manage stress, boil down to pretty simple things like moderation, mindfulness, timing. What's the one small, tangible change you could make today? Based on this wisdom from 2 centuries ago, something that acts as your first defense against future illness before you even think about medicine. Something simple, rooted in this old wisdom that could genuinely shift your health path starting tomorrow. Something, it's a bit to chew on, perhaps.